The Wall Street week. In the days following Donald Trump's victory, the market's reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. But our next guest seems to think that it won't last.
Let's welcome back former budget director under President Ronald Reagan, David Stockman. David, when you joined us about a month ago, you sort of warned viewers to go to cash. You thought the markets would be very volatile. Obviously, we've had this Trump bump. But you're very concerned now, despite what Mario was just talking about, the sort of growth acceleration. Your main concern right now is what's going to happen in terms of the deficit.
Yeah, we have to be focused now on the morning after, not the giddiness of the 2 days after. Two things have happened this week that are just shocking, like political, economic, and financial earth has gone out of its orbit, I think. Now, one was the asteroid that hit Tuesday night. I mean, that hit Washington, D.C., the ruling establishment, like nothing we've ever had, at least in 100 years. Did it surprise you?
I know you voted for Mr. Trump because you said so last.
Yeah, I was one of the 60 million rubes who said enough of this, it's got to change in a big way. We want an outsider.
Were you surprised?
I was hoping in the last week that it would get there. I laid out 2 days before the election a route to 270. It pretty much happened. What shocked me was Wisconsin. I didn't think that was going to happen, but I think it was kind of a weather vane of what's going on in the country. What I'm saying, though, is...
Yeah, let's go back to the deficit. Why, if the growth that is forecast now happens and we start to actually pay off the deficit after we grow it, what's wrong with that?
Because there is $20 trillion ticking time bomb called the debt ceiling right in front of us. That will happen in March. The new Trump administration is going to inherit that mess. I call it a stink bomb left from last October when they made that deal, Boehner and Obama, for the new president, and it's going to consume the entire first 100 days trying to get that thing through. The Republicans are not going to want to vote for a $20 trillion debt ceiling. He's going to have to go to Democrats. When you go to Democrats, they say no, no on Obamacare, no on some of the big regulations that you want to lift, no on a big tax cut for the wealthy. We'll argue with you on the tax cut for corporations and how we're going to do it. So my point is the market was giddy on the view that Washington is coming to the rescue with a huge new fiscal stimulus and infrastructure and all that. That is dead wrong. The newsflash is that Washington is out of business. The Imperial City is in smoking ruins. It will not function. It will be acrimony, confrontation, brinksmanship.
So if you were advising...
And, well, if I could just finish, so one point, that means we'll hit the next recession with nothing to break the fall. The Fed's out of dry powder, and Washington will be paralyzed.
Everybody's feeling pretty good, and I think David is sort of bringing this down.
That's why he's the gloom and doom guy.
But Anthony, part of this election...
Even the beard looks like he's living in the bomb shelter.
Anthony, part of this election message was that Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump now, knows how to negotiate and do deals. I mean, isn't he going to be able to go to the Congress and deal in the way that hasn't been done?
Listen, I'm optimistic because in the transition meetings that I've been in and the conversations I've had with him post-election, he is really looking to do what's right. He's not really focused on left or right, and I think that's a good philosophy for right now in our country. But my question to you is, what would you give him? What kind of advice would you give Mr. Trump?
The advice I would give him is that he cannot rebuild defense, build a wall, enforce the borders, spend more on veterans, have a massive tax cut, have a huge infrastructure program, and not touch Social Security or Medicare or any of the other entitlements. That is Reagan fiscal follies on steroids, and we could do it then because we only had a $1 trillion national debt. We got a $20 trillion debt now, and we got $10 trillion more built in. In other words, before one Trump program is enacted, there's another $10 trillion of red ink coming from what's already there. And you can't add 4 or 5 or 6 trillion.
Let's walk away from the deficits for a second in the budget. Is the growth projections out there realistic? Will there be the kind of GDP growth with the tax cuts and the changes that he's suggesting?
That's the skunk in the woodpile. The growth in the baseline is totally unrealistic, the CBO baseline. It's rosy scenario. So if you did everything Trump wants to do and it works as well as the supply-siders say, you'll be lucky to get what's already assumed. That's the point. There's no extra revenue. There's no deficit reduction. If you do everything he wants to do, you have to do that basically to reclaim. And here's why. The CBO baseline assumes we're going to go for 208 months without a recession. It's never happened in human history.
Why did you vote for him?
I voted for him because I'm totally fed up with the Fed. I think the national debt is a ticking time bomb. I at least think that he's realistic somewhat about our interventionist, war-oriented foreign policy. He was smart enough to say, I'll negotiate with Putin and not, argue that he's some kind of a latter-day Hitler. So there were basically items in his
David,
list.
You mentioned the Fed today. You mentioned the Fed last time you were on. Whether he keeps Janet Yellen through her term, there'll be probably a new head of the Fed. Who should be the head of the Fed?
Well, I mean, if you wanted someone who really knows what they're doing, it should be Jim Grant. Jim Grant is a student of central banking from day one, and he understands that we don't need price controls on money and debt and the stock market. We need price discovery. We need to let people, hundreds of millions of people who are out there in the market, determine what the interest rate is, what the money market rate is, and so forth.
And he's also for a stable, fair currency as well. I mean,
Yeah.
so some of our viewers may not know who Jim is, but he's the legendary newsletter, Grant Interest Rate Observer.
Yeah, I mean, he's been studying this for a long time. But the point is, we need to get the Keynesians out of there. I think they made a mistake this week when they said, well, we're going to replace Janet Yellen and Fisher, but we'll let them run their term. A huge mistake. Big mistakes will be made in 2017 unless they get those two Keynesian money printers out of there, and they can. All they have to do is say, I have no confidence in you. You've made a mess out of this. This bubble is going to crash. I would like you to do the decent thing and resign. Okay? That's simple. But then that would wake up Wall Street to the fact that the days of the Fed basically keeping you in ever-rising prices are over, that we're in a totally new ballgame. So the thing I want to summarize with is that we're entering a chaotic period of non-governance, of a central bank that can't function anymore, that's out of dry powder. There's nothing to rescue this economy. We're going to have a recession. I follow the IRS, not the BLS. The IRS tells me how much money they're collecting, and it's been flat and actually negative for the last 4 or 5 months, even on payroll taxes. And that means the economy is long in the tooth. It's slipping into a recession. When the confrontation over the debt ceiling happens, when the disappointment over no traction on the Trump stimulus happens, we'll be in recession. I will say in 6 months, the deficit will explode to over $1 trillion annually. They're not going to be in a position to do all these huge things. Now, I don't blame Donald Trump. He is inheriting a mess, a rigged system that is far worse than anything even he imagined, and he was colorful about what he said.
All right, well, I can't leave it on that because there was a great victory, and we did call it here on Wall Street Week last week, so congratulations.
Well, congratulations to you. You stood there through the whole thing.
David, thank you, and we're looking forward to getting your help and advice. So thank you.